Namaste. Welcome to Indian Knowledge Systems Primer Course for Children. In this session, we will look at Ritucharya. There is a famous saying which goes as Yat Pinde Tad Brahmande, which means whatever is there in the environment also exists in the individual and vice versa. One can infer from this that the individual and the environment very closely coexist and are associated together. Hence, any seasonal change that happens in the environment is bound to affect the individual as well. Thus, in Ayurveda, Ritucharya is given as a set of seasonal regimen which is advised to be followed during such different seasonal changes. So, the Ayurvedic seasonal practices are called as Ritucharya. This helps in aligning one's lifestyles with the changing seasons. Thereby, it supports the physical and mental health, enhances immunity, and prevents the individual from seasonal illnesses. This is a very small definition of Ritucharya, where Ritu means season and Charya are a set of regulations. You can broadly understand as things that you can and cannot do. The different seasons impact temperature, wind, moisture and more. All of these influences our activities. The way we feel one day when it is a hot sunny day is very different from on a chilly monsoon weather. Things that we would want to eat, our appetite, all of this vary simply based on the season. Hence, Ritucharya is given as a list of seasonal regime focusing on practices that suit the environment and the bodily changes during each Ritu or seasons. It includes different aspects such as diet, lifestyle changes, activities that one can and cannot do, and very strict regulations as per each Ritu. Broadly, Ayurveda classifies the seasons into 6, which is called as Shad Ritu. So, these are all the 6 seasons that we are going to talk about in this session. The first season or the first Ritu is called Shishira Ritu, which is late winter. Next comes Vasanta Ritu, which is the springtime. Third is Grishma Ritu, which is summer. Fourth is Varsha Ritu, which is rainy days or monsoon. Fifth is Sharad Ritu or autumn. And sixth is last one, which is Hemanta Ritu, which is winter. Now let's try to map these different seasons in our calendar. We have given this table to differentiate how our Ritus are very closely bound with the Indian calendar, while the dates in the Gregorian calendar might vary based on different years. On the leftmost column are the Shad Ritus. The next column is followed by the Indian Masa. The next column is the Gregorian counterpart. The last column specifically mentions about the Swarupa or the features, a very significant feature that happens during that particular Ritu. Let's try to understand this one by one. In Shishira Ritu, which is called as late winter, it happens during the Magha and the Phalguna Masa, which is roughly between mid-Jan to mid-March. Generally, the weather is very cool in nature. It is chilly. Second is the Vasanta Ritu, which is the springtime. It happens during the Chaitra and the Vaishakha Masa, which is spanning between mid-March to mid-May. This is also the flowering season. We can see such beautiful, colorful flowers all over Bharata. Please be mindful that all these Shad Ritus and the timeline given are very, very closely bound to Bharata, because this will definitely vary on the geographical position of a country. Third is the Grishma Ritu or summer, which happens between Jyeshta and Ashada Masa, which is between mid-May to mid-July. The heat is going to be very high since it is summer. Summer season is followed by the rainy season, which is the Varsha Ritu, spanning from Shravana Masa to Bhadrapada Masa. Mid-July to mid-September is when the rainy season happens. So rains are going to be very heavy. Next comes the autumn or the fall season, which is otherwise called as the Sharad Ritu. Ashwina Masa and Kartika Masa, between this timeline is where the Sharad Ritu falls. It can be mapped between mid-September to mid-November in the Gregorian counterpart. The moonlight is very cool and very bright during this time. Hemanta or the winter season is the last among the Shadritu. It falls between Margashira Masa and Pausha Masa. That is roughly mid-November to mid-January. Snowfall or extreme cold is the critical swarupa of this particular Ritu. Now, we have clearly seen how the different seasonal changes can be directly mapped with the months. Let's try to understand this a bit more. One can easily understand the seasonal changes are tightly bound with the astronomical events that happen during that particular time in a year. So, it's easy to understand that Kala is considered as a divine entity. The time is considered very divine and it causes change in the universe. Time measurement happens through periodic changes. For example, when we say one day, what does that mean? Astronomical relevance of one day is that Earth has completed one rotation. That's considered as one day. Rotation on its own axis, which is equivalent to 24 hours now. At the same time, what is the astronomical significance is that we will be able to see that the sun has once risen and set. The next sunrise marks the beginning of the next day. Thus, time measurements usually happen with periodicity. Here is an example that talks about 1 year. 1 year similarly marks the completion of one revolution of Earth around the sun. Seasons especially are also periodic. They are caused by the tilt of the Earth on its axis of rotation and the Earth's revolution. So, for us to feel the heat during summer, we should ideally be positioned somewhere very close to sun. Hence, Earth, the Bhumi or the Bhuloka will be very, very close to the sun at that particular time during its revolutionary span. Based on the tilt, the weather, the temperature, the wind pattern, all of that gets affected. Different heat is generated at different positions in the orbit. Hence, tilt of the Earth on its own axis is also a critical parameter for influencing the seasons. So, influences the heat, temperature and other climatic conditions. What influences heat, temperature and other climatic conditions? The tilt of the Earth on its own axis, at the same time the Earth's revolution around the sun. Both these factors are the causative of seasonal changes. Now, let's try to understand how Kala is divided broadly. What we are trying to do over here is split one whole year or one full revolutionary cycle of the Earth into two. 1 year, as mentioned, is divided into two parts, Adhana Kala and Visarga Kala. Adhana Kala is marked by Uttarayana and Visarga Kala is marked by Dakshinayana. Uttarayana means the northern run of the sun. One can see that during the festivals of Makara Sankranti, we can start feeling that the sun keeps moving towards the north. But at the same time, post-June, we can also feel that the sunrises are moving towards the south. So, the northward movement of the sun comes in the Adhana Kala, while the southern movement happens during Visarga Kala. Heat is going to be high, while cooling properties of the earth gets reduced during Adhana Kala. During the Visarga Kala, the opposite happens, where the heat decreases and cooling property of the earth increases. Seasons that fall under Adana Kala are Shishira, Vasanta and Grishma Ritu, while the other three seasons such as Varsha, Sharad and Hemanta Ritu fall under Visarga Kala. The dominant rasas during Adana Kala are Tikta, Kashaya and Katu, which is bitter, pungent and astringent. While at the same time during Visarga Kala, the other three Shadrasas, which are Amla, Lavana and Madhura, that is sour, salty and sweet. So body will become weaker because of the excessive heat. But the cold during the Visarga Kala enables the body to become stronger because we will be able to better retain water as well. Water forms the major component of our constitution. Sun dominates the Adana Kala while moon dominates the Visarga Kala. So now let's also try to understand a bit more as to why should one get to know what is Ritucharya. What is Ritucharya? Ritucharya are set of seasonal regimes that are advised for an individual to be followed during different Ritus. We have already established the strong connection between the dosha and the Ritus. How so? Because during summer, you are definitely going to feel a lot of heat. And if you are feeling heat a lot, that definitely means that your pitta has aggravated. And hence, we can understand that the summer heat is also causing an increase in the temperature in this body. Seasonal change directly is connected to what is happening to that particular individual. Thus, the doshas inside the individual are balanced or can get imbalanced because of seasonal changes. Hence, it is very important to understand and to follow seasonal regimes to maintain balanced health. Let us now try to understand what are all the changes that can happen in these doshas. Number 1, we have already seen this in the dosha session. We will just very quickly revisit it now. The first variation that can happen is chaya, which means accumulation of the deranged doshas in its main site. Each dosha has a characteristic site attached to it. Site is nothing but location. So, the deranged dosha during chaya will be in its own site. For example, vata dosha in the intestine. What is the location of vata dosha? It is intestine. Hence, the vata dosha inside the intestine will get deranged. That is called chaya. Prakopa is when the accumulation of the deranged doshas has already happened and they will start accumulating in main seats of organs, such as vata dosha in the lower back region, which means the dosha has deranged to that level that it has started to spread that imbalance across the shrotas or the energy channels. Prashama is the third variant where the dosha has come back to the normalcy after derangement. Let us now try to understand how these tridoshas get deranged based on the ritus. Let's carefully look at this table. Vata dosha gets deranged in the Chayarupa during Grishma Ritu. But if it is Varsha Ritu, it becomes Prakopa. What does that mean? You are going to have Vata imbalances affecting your lower back region. Have you felt that after a good rainy season or during the rainy season as well, when you fall asleep and when you wake up in the morning, you feel a lot of heaviness in your body? That's because of the Vata imbalance. But the Vata, which is starting to get imbalanced during Grishma and gets completely imbalanced or deranged during Varsha, comes back to its actual normalcy during the Sharad Ritu. For Pitta, the graph goes like, it starts its derangement during Varsha Ritu, which is rainy season. It gets very high during the Sharad Ritu. That's why autumn is seen to be or felt to be very dry, because the Pitta inside the body also becomes very high. But During Hemanta Ritu, which is cold season, winter season, it comes back to its normalcy. What happens to Kapha? Definitely during Shishira, which is winter, it will start to derange. It shows the Chaya symptoms. But during Vasanta Ritu, it will become Prakopa, meaning it will be deranged and it will locate itself in other main sites. But during Grishma Ritu, which is summer, the external heat helps to melt the kapha and brings back to its normalcy. Let us also try to understand this table using these examples. How do we go on about understanding this table better? Is that we can read the above as Vata accumulates in the intestine during Grishma Ritu. Why intestine? Because it is Chaya symptom. Intestine is the actual seat of the Vata dosha. Hence, Vata accumulates in the intestine during Grishma Ritu and it gets accumulated in the lower back during the Varsha Ritu. Varsha Ritu hence becomes the Prakopa symptom. But it finally becomes normal in the Sharad Ritu. Normal is Prashama. So, it becomes Prashama in the Sharad Ritu. Okay? Now, let's try to understand the deranged doshas and their effect. What we saw previously is how the doshas are getting deranged because of the seasons. Now, we will see what happens during those derangement. During Varsha, that is monsoon season, and early Sharad, derangement in Vata can cause joint pain, stiffness, digestive issues and anxiety. At the same time, the Grishma Ritu, during the Grishma Ritu, what will happen? Grishma is summer. So, summer heat is very high. Hence, which dosha will get deranged? Pitta dosha. So, the Pitta dosha can cause dehydration, skin rashes, digestive issues and irritability. During Shishira and Hemanta, what are Shishira and Hemanta? Winter and early winter respectively. So, during such winter seasons, Kapha dosha automatically gets deranged and hence one can feel asthma. It can cause asthma, respiratory issues and allergies. Let us now try to understand Ritucharya with a lot more detail. Let's try to understand each of the season. What are its do's and don'ts? What is the major Panchamahabhuta that operates during that season? How do we react to such seasonal changes? What are the good ways to keep our body hale and healthy during such seasonal changes? So, we will try to understand this season by season. So, what are all the aspects we will be looking at for each season is that number 1, we will try to map the Ritu with the time period. Meaning, we will say that this Ritu comes in this particular month. We have already seen it. It's just a quick revision. Next, we will talk about the climatic condition. What is the weather like during that particular season? Third is the dominant Mahabhuta. Understanding which is the dominant Mahabhuta helps us to intuitively understand which dosha could possibly get deranged. So, hence, after understanding what is the dominant Mahabhuta, we will understand the doshic constitution during that particular Ritu and what are all the changes that happen in the body at that time. Let us also try to understand Vipaka, which is what is that the tongue would crave for during that time, which is the predominant taste that is acceptable during that particular Ritu. We will talk about the recommendations for both diet and lifestyle changes. At the same time, we will also list the set of regulations that are advised to be followed during that particular Ritu, which will also include things that should not be done, things that can be done, all of that. We will then talk about the festivals that come in each of the Ritu. One can clearly understand looking at the festivals which are also very seasonally bound that things that we prepare during that particular festival is very akin to what one can eat during that particular Ritu. Let's deal with that as we move on. So, the first season is the Shishira Ritu or the late winter. The time of Shishira Ritu, as mentioned earlier, is from Magha Masa to Phalguna Masa, which is mid-January to mid-February. What is Shishira Ritu? It's late winter, so it's going to be very cold. Or we will have high cold winds, but at the same time, intense sunlight is going to come. If you see, mid-January also marks the Uttarayana. So intense sunlight is going to come. The dominant Mahabhuta during Shishira Ritu is earth and water. Hence, one can understand that the Kapha dosha is definitely going to get accumulated because the Mahabhuta is earth and water, which is the Kapha constitution. The body changes that entails during Shishira Ritu is that digestive fire will be very high, the Jataragni will be very high, but because of the Kapha constitution, it will also provide for immense strength in the body. The Vipaka or the post-digestive taste that we would like is that of sweet and astringent. Eating sour, salty, heavy and warm, unctuous meal is advised during Shishira Ritu because it helps to keep your body warm. Heavy food helps to quench the high digestive fire that happens during the season. Hence, milk and milk products are also advised to be had during the Shishira Ritu because it helps in warming up your body. At the same time, Abhyanga practices and oiling your scalp, whole body is also advised because it improves and increases the heat of the body. Spicy, bitter, astringent food should definitely be avoided during these times. You are not advised to sleep or have a nap during daytime during Shishira Ritu because it will again increase and cause a lot of doshic imbalance. We can have warm and nourishing food, light exercise and oil massages, but it is advised not to have cold and raw food because the digestion of it will take a lot of time. And excessive physical activity is also not advised. Some very common festivals that occur during this time is that of Makara Sankranti. Like I mentioned earlier, you would have a lot of sugarcane during Makara Sankranti. See what you can have during the Vipaka, if you see in the previous slide, it would mention sweet. So things that you have during Makara Sankranti festival, one of the very important item is that of sugarcane. See, are you able to see the close correlation? What we are trying to do over here is that when there is a seasonal change, things that grow also change and things we consume also is very correlated with what grows and how the seasonal change works. One other festival is Vasant Panchami, Mahashivratri and also Kumbh Mela. Can anybody tell me what happens during Kumbh Mela? It's a mandatory Ganga Snan. The second season is the Vasanta Ritu or the spring season. It falls during Chaitra to Vaishakha Masha, which is mid-March to mid-May. The weather is hot and there will be intense sunlight. The predominant Mahabhuta will be fire. So, if fire is going to be predominant, one can comfortably understand the dosha that will get accumulated will be Pitta. But before it starts accumulating, what happened in the previous season? There was a lot of Kapha accumulation. So, since Pitta will be in the Chaya Rupa, the Kapha that was already getting accumulated and was in the Prakopa Rupa will be coming to Prashamana. Meaning, the Kapha will melt and come back to its normalcy. Body changes will include disturbed digestion and reduced digestive fire. The Vipaka would be that of pungent, bitter and astringent. Some recommended diets include tasting bitter, pungent and astringent food. At the same time, these are light for digestion. Recommended lifestyle practices include applying anjana or collyrium to the eyes to help them cool them down. Inhalation of herbal smokes, oil pulling, all of this is advised. Because these will avoid respiratory disorders and help in improving digestion. One should definitely avoid sweet, sour and salty foods because sweet food is very heavy for digestion and the Agni is not that great during this time. One is advised to have light and easily digestible food, have dry massages and regular cleansing, whereas heavy and oily food and daytime naps are not to be done. Some famous festivals during the Vasant Ritu include Holi, Ramanavami, Ugadi, Gudi Padwa, Vaishakhi, Vishu, Bihu, Hanuman Jayanti, Vasant Panchami, Chitrai festival. This happens in southern part of India, especially in a town called Madurai. Chaitra Navratri. All of this happens during the spring season. Spring has a lot of festivals, no? Grishma Ritu, which is the third Ritu, that is the summer season, falls during the Jeshta and Ashada Masa, which is mid-May to mid-July. There will be lot of loss of moisture in the atmosphere. At the same time, the sun will be extremely intense. Hence, the dominant Panchabhuta will be fire and air. Kapha would have definitely decreased by now and Vata would start to increase. The body strength will start to get lessened. As we could recollect, this falls in the Adhana Kala. Adhana Kala is characteristic of lessened body strength. The Vipaka is that of sweet, bitter and astringent. Some recommendations to diet include consuming sweet, cooling liquids and unctuous foods as ghee, such as ghee, milk and rice. One is also advised to avoid direct sun exposure and heavy physical activity because all of this will heat up the body while the atmosphere is also or the surrounding ecosystem is also highly heated up. They are advised to stay in naturally shady, cool places during the daytime. Individuals are advised to avoid hot, spicy, salty and sour foods because all of this will increase again the body temperature. Cool, hydrating food, early morning and evening exercise and moonlit walks are advised. One should not have spicy and sour food and extreme exposure to direct sun. Some festivals during this time include Ratha Yatra, Eid ul Fitr, Guru Purnima and Nirjala Ekadashi. Fourth is the Varsha Ritu or the monsoon. There comes the monsoon after a very hot summer season. It falls during the Shravana Masa and Bhadrapada Masa, which is mid-July to mid-September. Of course, there is going to be rainy clouds and low sunlight in the climate. The predominant Mahabhuta will be water and earth. That said, the dosha here is that of Vayu, which will get aggravated, while the Pitta dosha gets accumulated. Because the body is starting to become heavy, during the Varsha Ritu, the digestive fire still gets reduced and we will have only minimum body strength. The Vipaka includes sweet, sour and salty food. Some dietary recommendations include general dietary regimen which balances all the three doshas, which is light, easily digestible but also balances all the three doshas. Medicated warm water baths are suggested as a lifestyle practice. Cold liquids, overexposure to sun and daytime naps are advised not to be done. Whereas warm and light food, indoor exercise, regular cleansing are something one should do during the Varsha Ritu. One is also advised not to have cold and heavy food and exposure to rain. We have always felt this, don't we? During monsoon, we would like to have a hot cup of liquid, may it be soup or a milk. But the point is we would never want or crave for anything cold or heavy. Festivals that happen during Varsha Ritu include Krishna Janmashtami, Ganesha Chaturthi, Raksha Bandhan and Onam. Sharad Ritu, which is the fifth season, otherwise called as autumn. It falls in Ashvina to Kartika Masha, which is mid-September to mid-November. The climate during this particular time of the year is that the temperature will start to increase, but the sunlight also will start to increase. This time of the year is prone to a lot of dryness where there is no moisture in the air, there is just dryness. Leaves falling down is a characteristic feature of Sharad Ritu. The dominant Mahabhuta here would be air and space. Pitta dosha would start to vitiate. The body changes will include weak digestive fire. Hence, the vipaka will be pungent, bitter and astringent taste. Since the pitta starts to vitiate, it is important to have a diet that balances the pitta. Thus, we would prefer having bitter, sweet and astringent taste. Some recommended lifestyle practices include exposure to moonlight, therapeutic purgation to remove the excess pitta. One should definitely avoid exposure to sun at its peak, and heavy, spicy and oily meals should also be refrained from. Warm and easily digestible food, sunbathing. Sunbathing in the sense early morning sunrise, you try to catch a good amount of sunlight during that particular time, and light exercise are advised to be done. Whereas cold and heavy food and excessive sleep is something one should not do because it will cause further derangement of the doshas. Festivals include Navaratri, Durga Puja, Diwali, Sharad Purnima, Vijayadasami, Kartika Masa, Kartika Deepam and Tulsi Viva. Now, let's move on to the final Ritu among the Shad Ritus, the Hemanta Ritu, which is the early winter. Falls during the Margashira Masa and the Pausha Masa, which is mid-November to mid-January. Winds will be very cold and intense snow can be seen at higher altitudes. During the daytime, the sunlight will also be intense. The dominant Mahabhuta here definitely will be earth and water, similar to Shishira Ritu. Kapha dosha starts accumulating and Pitta dosha starts getting pacified from vitiation, meaning it's starting to come back to its normalcy. The body changes will include high digestive fire and strength of the body will be at its peak during this time. Vipaka will be sweet, sour and salty. Moving on to dietary recommendations, we will be sensing strong appetite. Hence, we will be able to digest complex foods. Hence, it is also advisable to have oily, hot, sweet, sour and salty foods because all of this will be heavy and the digestive fire will also be very intense. So, heavy food will help quench the digestive fire. Recommended lifestyle practices include using warm water for drinking, bathing and washing. One should sort of avoid overly spicy, pungent, bitter, astringent foods. At the same time, cold drinks and other foods, cold foods should also be avoided during the season. Nourishing oily food, oil massages and moderate exercise are advised to be done during the season. Whereas raw and cold food, excessive physical activity should not be done. Festivals during the Hemanta Ritu include Bhai Dooj, Lohri, Makar Shankranti, Geeta Jayanti and Datta Jayanti. Here is an illustration of Makar Shankranti. So now we have seen in this session that what is Ritucharya, which is the seasonal regimen mentioned in Ayurvedic texts for an individual to follow during different Ritus. These are seasonal best practices. At the same time, we try to understand Kala as Adhana Kala and Visarga Kala because all of the physical phenomena such as northern run of the sun, temperature changes, how the body is going to react, all of this depends broadly on the Adhana Kala and Visarga Kala. Post which we try to understand what causes seasons to happen. At the same time, we also delve deeper into what are all the Ritucharya practices ascribed to specific seasons. Here is a very beautiful illustration on all the data, all the information that we spoke till now. Let's try to take up one example and understand. Let's start with maybe Vasanta Ritu. So if you see Vasanta Ritu, it is nothing but the spring season. Where does it fall? Spring falls from mid-April to mid-May. You are advised to have sour food because the pitta is going to start increasing. Overall, the weather will be warm, smooth and the flowering also will start. Thus, if you see over here, the pitta is starting to increase and the kapha will start to melt. It will go back to its original position. Hence, it's like this. Do you see? Are you able to understand this picture? Let's take up one other season. Okay, let's take Hemanta. Hemanta is the early winter season. So, what happens during then? It is cold, damp and heavy. It falls between mid-January, that is mid-December to January. So, the seasons are in this cyclic order. Okay. So, it's from mid-November, it covers the whole of December and then mid-January. That's how it is. So, one can see that the kapha dosha will be extremely high during this particular time. So will be the vata dosha, while the pitta dosha will be sort of normal. It will be coming back to its normalcy. Yes. So, thereby we have now understood how seasonal variations can affect an individual's health, and understanding seasonal variations also helps in intuitively working towards building a very robust routine that can ensure overall health and well-being of an individual. Thank you.